Okay, here we go. Let's see. Let me check YouTube and I'll just see if they're connecting. Okay. Yeah, it's on. Game on. We got
Okay.
one person. That's me. All right. No, they're coming. It's going to take us. Oh, I can tag you if you'd like. Want me to tag you on Facebook?
I have your feed up on my phone, and
Oh,
so
you
I'm
could
going to
share it
share
then.
it.
Same thing. You can share it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although
So
it.
I'll wait to see it come up.
Oh wait, I think that was. Yeah, you'll probably have to refresh it before it'll come up. It's up now. I'm looking at it.
I
Just
see it
refresh
too
it.
online.
Yeah, just refresh it, and
Okay.
you'll be.
Perfect.
Oh my God. I should have started. I should have done these interviews not interviews, but these shows in a format that you see a lot out there, which is where they only show the person that's the guest. Because the way my hair is looking, it's kind of hard to look at myself. Hello, Claudia Felix. Good to see you. One thing I wanted to say before we formally kick this off is that, first of all, thank you all for your continued love and support and contributions that allow us to keep doing this. You know, I used to say it's miraculous and magic, and it is, but it's normal. This is how it works. You know, this is what equal energy exchange is all about, and we try to perpetuate that as well by paying it forward with what is given to us. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, because I don't even know how I would have made it over the last 3 or 4 days without having the experience I've had being on the road, Morgan and I, and sometimes when I'm alone, to be able to sustain your mindset and your determination and your, your electricity, your feelings. Had it not been for the support that we've been able to develop in this vortex we call Soulogy, which is not about me and Morgan, it's about everybody. So this is the new language, and that's why it's no longer magical or miraculous, because this is the normal as we've moved into this new realm. But I want to say that I've received several messages and seen a few comments, and actually spoke to a lady in Clovis, New Mexico. I believe that was her, because you know how the 3D memory is, but I believe it was her, because whoever was telling me this was telling me in person, and they were telling me about you. And all these messages I was referring to were about the two of you and the comments that I saw. But I was actually talking to this lady, Catherine Knoll, and she said, "There's this couple," and I was like, "I think they're coming on Tuesday," and I showed the picture, and she's like, "Oh my God, that's them." So I've heard a lot of great things. So thank you for coming in and sharing space with us. Thank you for honoring us with your presence, and thank you for what you're doing, because a lot of people haven't understood that. Not that that makes it right or wrong, but I think people are starting to understand the power and the purpose of these connections that some people call twin flames and soulmates. I don't even care what they call them. It's just love, internalized and externalized in collaboration. It's a perfect imperfection in its trajectory, because we are perfection. And it is amazing what happens, and I'm really looking forward to jumping into this and seeing what what your experience has been all about. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd, so much for just lighting up the room. We were watching your live before this one, and can feel your energy, your community's energy, the community we get to share in this evening, and the aliveness of it. And it's amazing. We've been a little more secluded, inward through various death and rebirth experiences, and you've been called to assemble a large gathering room, and we're very, very honored just to partake of the nourishment that's here.
Well, everything I heard about you is true. I can already feel it. There's no mistakes, and I should just point out. It's so hard to reconcile the linear timeline and the etheric single timeline. But to your comment, because a lot of people, because I am the face most of the time, but I just have to give credit where credit's due. And somewhere around 2008, 2009, a woman in Australia named Morgan Lee asked the universe to help her to create a space where people could share their stories and their skills and abilities. And there's a lot more to that story, but today isn't about us. So I just want to pass that on, because as we were guided to do these things, we act on them, and that energy that we are creating together expands. So I have to ask you, most of the people that come on here, well, obviously most of them are individuals, but we've had probably 50 couples on. And I usually say to them, did you have a wake-up experience, or have you always been this weird? But it doesn't seem that question applies to you, because you are exuding something that we're starting to see more of, and you obviously have anchored. How did you guys meet? Was there some personal trauma leading up to the explosion that propelled you toward each other? Or were you just walking in the woods one day and you came across this maiden?
You love telling this story, so
Well,
I'll let you go.
Then I'll get you to fill in.
Okay.
We were in both personally in deep life change and deep life collapse for me, and embraced a spiritual group. I was living in Canada, my home country, and was traveling to Oregon to be a part of a spiritual healing group, and was finding it very transformational. But on my first visit there, I was really quite taken by Jelelle, and over the course of 3 years of involvement in this group, I brought 3 different attractions to her, and on the third one, I was successful in entering a relationship.
I just wasn't quite ready for you yet. I needed to do more healing. I think it's unusual for the man to, from what I've heard, for the man to be the one to see it, to feel the connection. But Raphael really pursued me in a way, and I just at the time didn't have the worth to let it in. I just wasn't ready. And meeting in this healing group we were doing, that's when we started working with aspects, parts, and soul aspects, and that's the foundation of our work now that we do with people. So I finally caught up with you.
You know, that's an interesting comment, because I think it actually works both ways. And I think what you're describing about Raphael, I can totally relate to, because we connected by messenger, like at 3:00 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning my time, 3:33 actually, and I demanded a phone call the next morning, and she's like, I don't talk to people, and I convinced her to. But when I heard her voice, I saw the end result, and I tell her many times, I know where we're going. I don't know how to get there. And I think what I'm saying, or trying to say, is what you were talking about, if we break it into the masculine and feminine. Because to your comment, I think you, even based on what I've seen, and really every couple I've talked to, the feminine is the antenna. She understands what things are, where he understands what he's looking at. And that's all he needs to know, because nothing is going to stop him, where she is the sacred wisdom or the women's intuition. Yeah, so I've never really been able to put that together until looking at the reflections that you are and listening to what you had to say. So thank you.
I like that feeling of that. That feels really true. The first time I was in this group for a few months and called up Jelelle asked if I could spend some time with her, and we ended up in a Starbucks, and I just came up with it quickly, just honestly, to say I just felt attracted to you this weekend. And we had this beautiful conversation that really opened out. And she said, I can't say as I feel romantically towards you, but I just feel really glad and honored to have had this time and to know you. And I felt really expanded out and prepared. And it wasn't until 2 years later that we became a couple. And there was a couple of other relationships for both Jelelle and myself that in that interim. And that really prepared us to be together. And there was proximity to one another and awareness of one another over those 2 years. And it was really divine timing and an unfolding that needed to happen.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I've met two couples, one just this past week. I stayed at their home for 5 nights. Same story. And the other one I've met in person too, actually. They came through Arkansas, and it was the same thing. In fact, the first couple I'm referring to, it was the same thing. They were in a group, and 2-3 years went by, and and there was a foundation laid. And if I look at Morgan and I, because there wasn't a physical experience for 17 months, I guess in a way we were doing the same thing. Because there never was, hey, you're the one and the only one. It was just, I pushed that, but she'd say, it's got to be wide open. And I think there's something to that. It's like, I used to say this when I used to drop more F-bombs, and I've tried to be better about it. But the world today teaches you to F first and then try to become friends. And I think this is become friends, and then the F in this case, find out what sacred sexuality is really all about, sacred union.
And I even actually facilitated Raphael in the work that we were part of.
Yeah.
And he surrendered to my space holding for a while, and then brought another attraction. And I said, okay, I think this isn't going to work. But that was so sweet to me that he has always uniquely seen my bigness and my gifts. And he's always surrendered to them in this beautiful way that also doesn't demean who you are.
Right.
And yet we've even felt at times when we really started going online and sharing our teachings and our writings, which was about 4 years ago when we moved to, when we were in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And was it longer than that? No, 6 years ago, sorry, linear time. But then I kind of led, right? And I was the one that was doing a lot of the sharing and putting stuff together and a lot of the space holding. And we both felt that that was part of the deal in a way, is that the feminine would lead in this certain way and he would support. But that it feels like that, especially in the last couple of years, has been shifting, where I kind of pulled out of some of that and a lot collapsed that needed to for me. Even karmic things, and then it kind of evened the ground out between us. And now I'm not surprised that now we're, on your show and other things are opening out because we're more unified. It felt a bit like I was doing it on my own, and I needed to in some ways. But
wow, that's here we go. But I totally get that. I heard. Like when I first talked to her, so this would be September 2015, I hadn't really had discussions. Of course, I hadn't done anything like this. I made a lot of personal or individual videos. That was kind of the first part of Soulogy, which actually started when Morgan and I met a week before. So go figure that. But
wow,
she would say that the feminine's going to lead the way. And at the human level, I didn't disagree. I didn't agree. I never heard anything like that. Like what? Because I didn't know about ascension. I didn't know, but innately, from the beginning, she's led. Period. We're going to do a session. Let me introduce you to your higher self. This is what sacred sexuality is. I remember telling her that, which we came together, and I had to sleep in my shorts for the whole 10 weeks, as I was trying to locate and express my love and passion. I said to her, well, what the hell is sacred sexuality? What does it look like? She goes, well, I don't know, but I know what it's not. So there was always this.
Didn't I say this to you? I've said this to him.
So I that's what I'm saying. And then I would just want to end it with this, what you said about the last couple of years. I remember getting downloads in March of 2020, right before COVID was announced. And I kept hearing, you got to hold space. You got to hold space. Not necessarily meaning about her, but really for me first, but then the external, which of course would start with her. And I've watched it over a couple of years. And obviously we had an infinite intelligence guidance that she needed to be in Australia, and we needed to be here. There was work that we couldn't understand that needed to be done, and of course, there's always multiple meanings and multiple purposes. But yeah, so again, I just want to say that because it is nice to be able to feel the energetic alignment and validation and coherence.
Wow, the portal of sacred sexuality that you speak to, I've been so overwhelmed by the continual learning ground of all the dimensions of sacred union, how it calls us out of a comfort zone and into an unknown territory and many deaths and rebirths. But on the feeling of sacred sexuality and this deep monogamous commitment to the exclusion of the all, I embrace you, there's a strange way that in the masculine and feminine domain, men are wired up, I guess, somewhere to be polygamous and want to be, and don't want to just be aligned with the one, to have this alignment with the all. And there is a strange way that in the deepest commitment of monogamy, the reverence you feel for your mate, you actually feel like you're making love with the entire opposite gender. And so that's been...
You'll say to me, when I'm with you, I feel like I'm with all women.
Yeah.
In a sense.
In
and
the
so
sacred commitment to the one, I am thereby beholding the all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I feel that too. I never use the word like all the women. To me, it's the whole universe. The Yoni-verse, no pun intended, but Yoni-verse, universe. And I've seen light language appear on her. I've seen her shapeshift, dragon, Egyptian princess, blue Hindu being with 8 arms. But you're right. The level of wisdom that comes through the conception frequencies of sacred sexuality, the birthing, which is the information, the coding, what you see. We could get into all kinds of experiences that we both had, but the point is, it is absolutely beyond anything we could ever comprehend or even come close to comprehending. And as soon as you get hit with it, you are reborn. You are basically a bare naked soul at that moment, and that's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
It's so beautiful to feel. I'm sure there's many in the audience too that are just feeling your sharing about you and Morgan and us as a couple today, that it kicks up that yearning, that mate ache that's coming from their soul and their heart, for those that are single or those that are in a relationship that they feel is collapsing or needs to collapse, and the grief and mourning, or in the waiting for the arising of that deep union that they are longing for. And my experience is that the entire experience leading up to drawing your mateship is just as sacred, and the internal unification, the preparation, is so needed and necessary, that it can be just as alive in that deep surrender to that. If you're meant to be together, there's no way that it's not going to happen. And unless you're just completely resisting it and not coming into tune with what's in your soul. But there is a perfect timing, and so it is magical, it is beautiful, but each individual's magic is so unique and so special. So you might get some tips from watching others, but really it's about being in the uniqueness of what comes together.
Yeah. It's like obviously a huge amplification of what a person's done internally, and I love what you said about that yearning, because it's like you want to give what you've gotten in your own internal universe, and then you come into range of a frequency that's like yours, and there's no denying it. And I remember the early months, because I never saw her on video like this. I got 2 pictures in 17 months. she knew that innate. She knew that part. She knew I know what not to do, and the thing is there were times I'd be like, oh, my human would come and go, that one's way too complicated. No. And I'd go for a walk, and her face was always right here. Didn't say anything. Wow. Just, like it was a constant that you can't detach from what is oneness frequency,
Mm-hmm. There's definitely been one of the big, like you mentioned, the ache and the yearning, and our focus has been a lot on the emotional body and feelings, and this is what we do in our parts exploration. So we're feeling the inner teenager, the inner child, what we call an inner protector, which is defense, essentially, and going into these pains and sufferings and traumas that it just feels like are so ripe to be transformed now.
Right.
And I've just experienced what we could call miracles of healing in things that were such deep traumas from this life, but also other lifetimes.
Right.
So the clearing, this sacred union is one ground to clear so much, obviously, from this life and those kind of things, but also our many lifetimes together, for which we've had a lot of different configurations, and we've connected to a lot of that. But really this opportunity, we call it emotional body awakening. That's been a lot of our focus. And we obviously go into the soul and we go into the body, and it's a holistic offering, but often just allowing and feeling can be really challenging.
Yes.
And allowing that feeling space, holding that space, that's really what we do with people. I really just feel people, because we so haven't been felt, what we call being felt. And this is the work we discovered at the very beginning of our relationship. And I feel like if we had just connected on the spiritual,
right, without
that emotional base tone, a lot of vulnerable sharings, daily check-ins, so many tears, can't even.
Ways to navigate conflict.
Ways to navigate the soul conflict that doesn't come in as much now as it did in the early years, obviously. But it's really this navigation of the emotional terrain, what we call the transactability of the relationship. So you can have all this soul capacity and all of these soul draw to each other, but then no ability to transact with each other in an emotionally mature way.
Yes.
That's what I've seen in so many that have come to us. And
it's a great point. I mean, and not to vilify yourself or the other with the human perception of judgment and condemnation, and something's wrong or someone's wrong or something's. It's not like that. I love the way you speak about this. It's not, I'm not saying it's eloquent, the words, it's the eloquence of the frequency of having experienced something and not being able to teach you, but be able to emit that frequency. And I'm talking about what is probably very difficult, or maybe the most difficult thing for these types of couples, or couples period, or connections period. And that is to navigate, because it is a number one thing here. The human is unique in our monadic aspect universe of feeling and the extremes of emotions. So we've gone through all the, gathered all the data, and now we're, Morgan pulled a channel about 10 days ago, awareness, love, resolution, where we were all operating at awareness, let's resolve, and then maybe you find the love. You know what I mean? Awareness, resolution, then love, kind of backwards. But I think that's what's happening, and what you're exhibiting is something that has not been discovered before, something that involves the multidimensionality and gives recognition to the life journeys prior to this summary life. And being able to carry a frequency and lead an individual or a couple to the place of potential that we might have called hope before, because hope doesn't exist anymore. It's just the space between doubt and faith, and these relationships are all about that. So thank you again. Very, very powerful.
I think the transactive. Thank you, Todd, for feeling that. The transactability can be so painful for people. I've met with a number of women in particular that have met what they feel is their soulmate, their counterpart, whatever we want to call it, as you said. And then they have this heartache experience that it can't transact for whatever reasons. The runner syndrome, they have all these labels to it, but there's this heartbreaking reality of digesting that. I just met with 3 women recently that had this experience happen. And so when we go back to then what is going on inside of you where the transactability isn't happening. So for us, it would be looking at which parts are polarized to each other that isn't allowing love to flow, that isn't allowing resolution in the way that you're speaking to. And going to the inner polarities, then as you've, I'm sure, experienced, opens out more transactability with your partner. But we tend, in mainstream, couples counseling, it's all about the horizontal. How are you talking to each other? Are you communicating? Versus the vertical, which is where really the transactability opens out as you become more loving, self-loving, compassionate to yourself and all these different energies inside of you. Then you can, on a horizontal, and we have seen this over and over and over with each other, where then we have more to come and give each other. We have more that can flow between each other. So sometimes the separation is just the individuals needing more individual time.
Exactly.
To be able to show up for it.
Exactly. One of the signs that I have that tell me I'm headed for, that I need to go be in a quiet space, is as the energy starts to come in, I'll start saying, not every time, it doesn't apply every time, but I'll say, I love you, or I miss you. It's like the human's starting to go, but it's unconscious. But I love what you said too, because these moments that, I think one of the fallacies of happily ever after that was a program was that you reach a point where you can relax, put your arms back, everything's just fine, and that's not the universe. It's the human perspective that looks at it as right or wrong. It's really just the dance of the dark and light, the masculine, the feminine, etc. But I love what you said in this particular tidbit, because not only does it offer that new connection, which is a higher alignment, but it also prepares you for the next one coming. And
the curiosity about the next one coming, right? You have to have that, this openness that there's going to be more, I think is what has led Raphael and I to be together in the way that we have. Even in that we've had a few brief separations. We've pretty much been together every single day, every moment, other than these 3 times for 6 weeks. And that was as long as we were guided to go. We ended up in the same house one time and across the street from each other. So we were still in the same.
You cheated. Yeah. You were in the same house.
Yeah, well, he was in a suite below. But we were still in the same bubble, but it was like hell.
Yeah. No, I know.
Separation. It was still a whole lot of karmic stuff moving through until this whole new opening. This happened even just a year ago with us. And we've always been really transparent about sharing that with people who follow us, because we don't want them to think it's a honeymoon and it's done and you're over, but rather that it's an ongoing exploration and it turns you inside out sometimes. And all of that is part of the process. And we've wanted to be really transparent about that. I see that with you and Morgan as well, that this is this is a ground we've chosen and signed up for, but it's the same, I like to call it the bliss mess. It's the same bliss mess that you're going through individually.
Yeah, there's another one. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, the vulnerability, the interface with love and ongoing. We obviously we have a honeymoon experience when we're drawn to one another because we're coming out of singleness, and there's this pole vault of going, from 2 on a scale of 10 to 8, and this new excitement. And then there's this conditioned expectation that that's going to settle down, and well, there's going to be ups and downs, but why couldn't it be ever unfolding discovery, learning, growth, infinite? That the honeymoon is just the first of many. But at core, that really freaks us out, because each time we go to a higher place, it's a higher place from which to fall, from which to lose. And so the calling to let in love and to take the opportunity of the growth that the bond gives us is really something to be negotiated with. And so that's been our go-to place, is to be able to, when conflict is arising, when differences are becoming pointed, to find the part of us who can actually feel what they're feeling underneath the conflict, or else we're just left with behaviors and assessing who's right and who's wrong.
Exactly.
And you're just touching on that right and wrong. And behavior, it could be independently, accurately true that I'm being an ass. And that's not nice. And so I'm the wrong one. But if even admitting that I'm wrong doesn't do a lot of leveraging, because I can't feel how to change that.
Exactly.
And there's a whole root to that. And it's just a punisher and shame cycle.
Yep.
And so transmutation of behavior has got to be happening on something below the surface, rather than trying to correct behaviors. And
Exactly.
and of course, that's true in all of our relational grounds, until we can get real, find what's a deeper stratum of reality, and feel it within on a vertical level, feel a shift there. Then the relationality can become really quite effortless and natural. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that's the type of information. I love information that breaks it down to the layman, to the human, because the human is the hero, because the human ultimately is on point, and it can either be trajectory of expanding consciousness on point, or where we came from, which is a unbridled, wild, where life happens to you instead of you creating life. But I think this is really great advice, what you're giving, because what it says to me is, it's not about the superficial. It's like if you're being an ass, which I know, looking at her, it's probably you 98% of the time. No, I'm kidding. But but if you're being an ass, then it's not about that. It's about, why are you being an ass? And even deeper than that, if I ask the question of you, and and it, like you said, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It's all relationships. So if I say to you, can we talk about why you're acting this way? Well, that's just the door opening. Now it's got to be coming from your end. You have to be open enough to go, okay, I'm going to remove my current mood, or at least table it or put it on the back burner, and allow you to tell me what you have on your mind. Now, then it shifts back to you, or me, I'm sorry, and I'm going to say, it's going to be imperative that I come with the same openness. So here's what I'm seeing, but I'm open that I'm wrong, or I'm open that I'm not seeing something. So this is the new code. The new code is to the human. It's like DEFCON 5 because everything's bombs are going off. But what you're saying is, and what you're giving visibility to, is the fact that if you go back to every time, even if you've got to take 3 6-week breaks or whatever the case is, you will progress. It sounds a lot to me like the individual journeys that we all have been taking with ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing there too is that I'm invested in this relationship because it's do or die for me personally. But it's a magical thing to feel that the investment here, though very private, is actually my deepest service of love to the all. And I've just been enjoying several of your videos in the last few days, just in preparation for this call. And I love that tone of feeling that we are all one. And those that are just beginning to awaken, or those that are really far from awakening, that they are just as much the divine as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And we were that person, whatever label we might put on them, not that long ago. And none of us get to arrive home until all of us fully arrive home. Mm-hmm. And in that, there's this awareness, though, that what we're living here very privately is actually serving the all and offering the codes, as you mentioned, to others to live in this. I felt the sharpest pangs of, for instance, in that moment of being an ass, where it was everything about my autonomy and sovereignty. My autonomy and sovereignty is being impinged upon, and that's not going to happen, And where did that passion and fire come from? There's the circumstance, and I can argue my case, but there's something below the drama that's on the surface that's coalesced back into reality, that this feeling is coming up so sharply. And it wasn't until that softening of heart that is the do or die moment, because I can be right. I could be arguing. I might be very convinced I'm right, and I might even be right if we want to get out the ruler and measuring stick of right and wrong. But I can go on my way back to being out of this relationship, and if that's what I want, I have the power to choose that. But if I want that soul courage and continued growth, and to grow beyond this hurdle that's staring me in the face, there's this softening of heart and soul that is needed. And without that, the relationship is torpedoed. Mm-hmm. But going through it, that feels like it. I love the feeling in general, how our deepest service is simply just being us. That's our currency in the world. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't look like a transaction. It doesn't look like on the surface, but it feels like the biggest contribution.
I agree. Loving, right? I mean, it's loving. And you said something I think that's important to restate. You're right. Everyone is the same at every point. And any perspective that I have that's not true about a person or a group or whatever makes me the ass, the unconscious ass. It doesn't matter what I'm channeling or who I was in a past life. I think what we're beginning to understand through what you're exhibiting and what you're saying is that twin flame was a coding. It was information. It was data. Ascension. All these different things. They're not meant to be labels that bring more of an energy of singularity and something that's not open, because that's how it operates. That's how love operates. And I think when you say being myself, that is total openness. that's a way to describe that every human can understand. Maybe we struggle to get there, but just to be me and to be in a space where you can just be yourself is incredible. But going back to what you're saying, for people in relationships of all kinds, being able to have discussions and conversations and interactions, especially if they're going to be intended to be in perpetuity, because that's really the part of that, that's that energy. We're coming from the human condition. How did you guys get to the point where you could see that the cure was in the curiosity, and that the inflammation of the charge no longer dictated the conversations? How did you get to that point? And do you still have to take a breath and a few steps away from each other from time to time?
I just come back to, I guess we could call it the process we offer, but really that's more of just the way we live our life, honestly. And we've codified some of it. I've written a book about it. We have these sessions, but really these are kind of, like you said, labels for something that is just how we have found to navigate the charged moments and to open our hearts, which is by connecting to these, like we've mentioned. I guess it's the human parts, really. It's
Right.
not bypassing the child within us, or the teenager and the teenage reactions, and labeling them as immature, and punishing them and shaming them and bypassing them and all of these strategies, but rather inviting them into our
That's nice.
relationship inside and with each other. So your inner child is a beloved part to me. I love that part of him. And his teenager, even when his teenager is up and being rebellious, I know that energy well. You know mine. We drop in sometimes with each other and let a part of us talk to another part of each other, or hold space for each other. Where I have a teenager named Jillian, who is my birth name. Jelelle is my soul name, and she just loves Raphael, and so rather than saying, oh, that's not okay, you can't be a space holder, it's more like sometimes she just needs him, and I'll channel Divine Mother for parts of Raphael when he needs that divine feminine frequency, or I need Divine Father frequencies. There's been so much healing that has come from allowing all of these energies in us to be in the room. And we also go into other lifetimes. So we have a soul pattern together of me being more of the priestess and you being more of the king, and not getting to be together because of that. And if we didn't have the way to access that and understand it, we had a lot of fire that came from that. That it feels like is now starting to resolve. That doesn't mean it's full resolution, but enough feeling of it, and not fusing, as we call it in our work, fusing to the reactions. That's just an off-gassing, right? That reactivity. So if we can get to the source of it, which we actually have the means to do, I feel like we were gifted that a long time ago when we first met, and that's really what we're here to seed, is this way of navigating that will resonate with some people and won't with others. But it has certainly been really helpful to us. So
it was a humbling to our own chosen way of life and what we were offering to others, surrendering to it again and again and again, that at this moment it's something feels like it's in the balance, like it could go either way. Because in that fused moment, there's like 98% reaction and only 2% of a higher self presence, maybe.
That's right.
And but that still is plenty to surrender and to invite the curiosity into the space, and to breathe and to feel and to dial in something deeper. And then feeling a part's reaction is so magical. It's like the healing that we're looking for and wanting to become more real and less programmed, less reactive, less our wounding, is it's going to come to us in relationship. The wounding came to us in relationship. The healing is likewise, I feel, going to come to us in relationship. So it's going to come with dramas are going to arise. And even the hermit, can't avoid drama of life and circumstance, those standing stones in a circle, circumventing reality. And I just feel those are divinely given for our growth.
And I keep thinking when you asked us about conflict, and I was more comfortable with conflict from the very beginning. I think you might get that. That I was fine with the energy of it, the passion of it, and yet you had much more conditioning around being a good guy.
Calm,
not getting angry, non-reactive. And so it kind of became clear to me that your passion was locked up in that, and that you needed to become an ass, actually. And I needed to be okay with it to some degree, not abuse by any means, but to be okay with you like shaking with this energy. And I think the good guy piece is maybe what the masculine struggles with a lot. Because there's so much about the patriarchy and how much it's done, and there's the weight of that on the masculine. So my intuition as a feminine was to help you bring it out, even if I was the one who caused that. So I always had this higher perspective about it.
There's the conflict at hand, and then there's
I remember
something
chasing you around going, give it to me. What are you needing to say that you're shaking because you can't get it out? And I think that's been really important, that allowing.
That's
not seeing him as an abusive father in that moment,
a lot to unpack there. But thank God for I don't have a 3D memory, but I got a multidimensional memory now. We all do. One thing that you said, though, and again, to me, a very succinct way to say it or sum up what you were saying, and it is what you were saying, part of it. But for me, it stood out because it was such a simple. And that is, I'll be honest. I don't know. I don't need to qualify it. I've had my own challenges with this whole boundary thing. My feeling is that everything is transitory, so we're always transcending. And what was the truth today in our understanding is going to get blown away tomorrow. What is a divine couple today is much bigger tomorrow. So this whole thing with boundaries I see as a transitional thing. And I know there's got to be something to it in terms of it being always. But what I'm trying to say is that you've explained something that I've never heard anyone say that I think every human being could relate to. Because of the fact that we've talked about boundaries, our inner children, through our practices, all of us individually, obviously a very important connection or connections to make within ourselves. But I've never heard anyone talk about allowing those inner children to come into, let's say, a controlled and conscious conversation and recognize them however that person wants to express them and share those parts of them, because we have shut down. We call them inner child, we could call them a lot of things, but whatever they are, we separated. And so to bring those back into ourselves, we all know what that's done for us. But to introduce it into the communion of a couple of any type, to me, is a very simple thing to understand. It's another thing to do it. But at least I could say, I have an expanded awareness of this in this moment. And it makes a lot of sense to me to share those parts of you. And I would look at my own situation, a very wild and crazy lifetime, very extreme things done that would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. But I have had to come to terms, loving terms with those parts of me. And I'm only saying this as an example, not because it's about me. But instead of hiding those things, I have made peace with these things. Totally. The worst of the worst. They're now just as loved as the best of the best. But I don't believe I've shared I don't believe I've shared that coding with my partner, at least not verbally or consciously. And I could see where that would be very valuable both ways.
Wow. Yeah, it's like I imagine that Morgan knows these parts of you. That's the thing. So even if you have it consciously, as we call, dropped in to the voice and the energy of, let's say, an inner teenager or who you were in your 20s, you're still transacting those energies with each other. It's just being conscious about it in the way that we're talking about. So we also form our own relationship. Like I mentioned, my inner teenager, for example, and her and I have been on this long 15-year journey together, and there's this deep bond and trust, so that when she rumbles even a little bit, there's a little bit of tension inside of me, I can pretty quickly locate if it's her or if it's another energy, or if it's maybe, we also work with this aspect called the gatekeeper, that came to me, I don't know, 10 years ago, that we feel is kind of like the protector of our souls and gives us access to all these other lifetimes. And it lifts the veil and it opens the soul. So working with the gatekeeper, this negotiation starts happening. And one of our rumble grounds, if we want to call it that, now is usually about our gatekeepers, actually. It's not so much the younger parts anymore after all of these years together. It's really these big soul aspects that are, I don't know about this.
The king and the priestess. The king and the priestess.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the king and the priestess that could never stay together because of the power of the two. And now here you are in the summary life and the final leg of it. And the stretch run. And this is where this is what it's all about.
Specific way of being with these energies. Like I said, that, some people hear about it and they're like, oh, I don't know about that naming and, parts, and does that make you fragmented? And it's like, well, we already are fragmented.
Exactly.
In our sense of it. We're already just coming into 3D made us fragmented, just coming out of the divine. Yeah. We fragmented. Right. So we're acknowledging this reality of fragmentation instead of labeling it or judging it, or we embrace it. And then as we embrace it, we get clear about how the different energies feel and process reality. And then actually more comes, more centered sense of being, because there's a contrast now. Instead of just becoming this energy where we're actually separate from it, we have a relationship with it. We use the word differentiation a lot. So we're differentiated. I can't hold space, for example, my inner teenager, if I don't know if I'm not separate from her. All I can do is become an immature reaction, which used to happen a lot in the early days until I've had to mature a lot, this part of me, to be able to be in this relationship. Especially Raphael's 11 years older. He was married, quite a full marriage. I had a lot of maturing to do. I don't see how I could have if I wasn't with these immature, if you want to call them that, aspects, but also accessing the maturity of my soul in order to hold space. So that seems to happen as well.
Yeah, I like that. I just like picture, because so much of what I have experienced with Morgan, I would best describe as childlike wonder. Pure. And that's probably not a really good way to describe what I'm trying to say. But listening to you and watching you, in my imagination, I'm going like if it was animated, and you locate that and you differentiate where is that aspect that's trying to be heard or bring in the coding, and she turns into this 14-year-old, and introduces her to the physical man, Raphael, who then, it's like a chain reaction. You know what I mean? And I do think that's one thing that's very accurate about the whole thing about the feminine in this particular time and place is going first, which to me just follows suit anyway, because it's not like a man can drop an egg, or a rooster drops an egg, or you know what I mean? It is there's something about that truth, right? The 1-2, the binary, but once it starts, it continues, right? I mean, your growth spurs something in him, his growth that was catalyzed by your growth, then, and it's like back and forth. And I love the way that you guys have lived it and are teaching it, sharing it, in that there's a reverence for the humanity. I hadn't asked you this, but I get the feeling that when you look at his his teenager that was an ass, or you look at her teenager or whatever, or her dark feminine, or whatever labels we want to put, you're not looking at it as an opponent or a program, right? You're looking at it as part of them and accepting it as part of them. I mean, this is unity consciousness at the gut level, right? At the human level, at the boots on the ground level. And we think that is the minuscule part of our multidimensionality, but that is the part that's on point. And if it's on point for one person,
we came here to have these reactions. We came here to be immature. We came here to be an ass. And in divinity, in fullness of divinity, we were just one with the all. We couldn't have a reaction. We couldn't feel separate. We couldn't feel immature. The angels can walk through walls, no problem, but we came here to be able to bump into walls. And this whole journey with boundaries and with limitation is, I love what you say, Todd, and when you speak to it, I resonate with it about having this base tone of wonder and curiosity. There's my perception. I don't even know how much of it is true, but there's something much larger always before me. And that reverence allows us to take our constructs, our realities, and surrender them and go, this is how it looks to me. This is how it feels to me. This is my honest reaction. And that's real. It's a constructed reality, but what reality is not constructed? There's a higher reality. I feel a wonder towards that. And your seat of being in connection with your divine self and the divinity that you are always invites growth and journey. And so the portal into the lower reality is the portal. The depression does not need to be overcome. The anxiety does not need to be overcome, but rather felt as a portal. That's a part of me. My journey into this group started when my business coach said to me, business coaching was going well, and I had doubled my business income, and I wanted to ask him, and I knew there was a spiritual tone in him, and I thought he'd give me an honest answer, but I wasn't sure where he'd come from. And I just said to him, so what would happen when depression arises and it kind of undergirds this surfboard that you're kind of upends the surfboard you're riding, and all this success, and it's working, and I was testing him more than anything with that question, because I was at a beginning place of being real with what I was honestly feeling. And his response to me landed in me like a spiritual surgery, and it was just a simple sentence, but he said, did it ever occur to you that a part of you has a very good reason for feeling this way? And that just was so not the standard answer of a how-to, a life hack on how to overcome, suppress depression. And that was, another confirmation point that I knew I wanted to decondition from all the Christianity I'd been raised in and embraced and fired up and did the full arc of, it was all about fixing something. And coming out of this polarized good and evil into embracing what is with real reverence, not this false reverence for the divine, but for the divine in me and the divine all around me. The divine
in your depression.
The divine in my depression, and that it was the portal into my reality of my soul's reasons for being here, very sacred reasons for feeling depressed as hell at times. And that has been a courageous journey, but it sure has been a curious one too, and continues to be.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely not about medicating. You know, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications. You know, there's just so many means to numb and suppress these portals that actually they're difficult to experience, especially anxiety and depression. But yet they offer so many gifts if you're willing to be with them. Um, and that is really what we've discovered. And I feel like I couldn't have been, I was always actually very emotional, and I was holding space for myself at a really young age, and didn't even realize it. And I think if you hadn't been able to access these deeper feeling tones in yourself, I wouldn't have been interested. I needed to be with a man who could be emotionally vulnerable. That was actually the most important thing for me. The soul clarities, the brilliance, the eloquence, these are all beautiful qualities. But again, it came back to the transaction, and what made me feel safe as a feminine heart was your ability to feel yourself, to be in tears, to connect with your little boy that needed you, or your teenager.
I'd like to pop this nice guy image, but I don't know how. It's so deeply conditioned in me to take this route versus honest vulnerability. But just admitting that inability, admitting that powerlessness.
The opposite of being powerful and the provider and all these things that you've been conditioned. It was actually a deconstruction of all of that you know, I've seen and witnessed in you over the years, that it keeps me here, keeps me compelled, and invites me to go deeper as well. And there's just growing trust in what looks like a collapsing man sometimes from a certain perspective, but is just in that collapse is then where this beauty grows from. You just become more and more pure. That's in a sense. And
it's the fertile ground of the chaos. Some people might call it chaos. It's the fertile ground, you know. Hey, you said something else that was really powerful, because I think one of the big things, this is just my take on it, one of the characteristics or symptoms of, let's just say, the most recent, let's say weeks, couple of months, this has been a powerful year, we all know that, but one of the characteristics of our higher levels of alignment seems to have, you know, obviously has been egoic attachments. But what I've seen ramping up these last few weeks are the egoic attachments that we have created that provided code and vehicle for us to expand and to share, are being challenged. Like even the woo-woo stuff is being challenged as we get forced back into what you're talking about, which is the humanity of us, the sacred humanity of us. But you talk about depression, and I know a lot of people out there can relate to that in this community. Those same hermits, or we call them empaths. You know, when COVID hit, their lives didn't change. Everybody's like, well, we can't go anywhere now. Well, you know, this is how it was. But medicating depression, medicating anything, and we're saying this, of course, not just strictly literally. We're saying this as a metaphor. One of those medications is, and you spoke to this, is to cure that depression through process and modality. Yeah. That was important at a time when we didn't have the awareness we have now. We've done a hell of a lot of work, and we need to give ourselves a little credit. So what I'm saying is that this is just another powerful echo of what we spoke about, you spoke about, and I restated, and that is the power of allowing those parts of us that the human society imprinted upon us, that they were ugly and dark and unwanted. Depression is not a sickness, it is a gateway. And when we can share these gateways, be it depression, be anything else, with the other, that's pure vulnerability. That's not even, it's vulnerability are just the stepping stones to transparency. And transparency is, I believe, what we're creating. So thank you so much for pointing out twice in very human terms that we can understand and apply, begin to apply, that every bit of us is there to be shared in this type of connection, or certainly with ourselves individually. That's a powerful, powerful thing. That speaks to the depths of vulnerability. It speaks to the depths. And it makes sense to me that the hardest parts will be the last ones to show up, and proportionate to the energetic emotional field will probably be the hottest ones, the ones that burn your ass, you know. And so again, thank you very much, because there are no coincidences for myself and for all of us out there. It's powerful times, and this is a very much a down-to-earth human explanation for what's happening in real time.
You know, what's interesting is that we've been offering this message for a long time, and it's just been, especially even with the parts work piece, and now I'm noticing in the last couple of years that more and more people are realizing this. They're being dropped into the emotive ground, sometimes in very painful ways, sometimes through the body getting really sick or ill, or abrupt separation or a divorce, life changes and shifts. But you know, where it's not so much now that people are advocating bypassing or transcendence or positive affirmations or even love and light. They're really more, in my experience, willing to go to the shadow, to these parts, because they can feel them. They're just vibrating, I think, so much more, because more light is coming in, because we're increasing our capacity, in my sense, to hold space for them. We're becoming more qualified, if you will, to be able to do this, when I think all we could answer before was, here's a medication. You know, that's the best we could do. But like you said, we're now capable with, so it's acknowledging that we are becoming bigger and brighter and lighter, yet that means we have a responsibility, actually, to these parts of ourselves that have been waiting for us, that need us. And especially what I experience in other lifetimes. So most people relate as a past life as something, oh, I was a priestess, you know. But for us, it's very, very visceral. I've wept with these priestesses. They're sisters of my soul, actually. And I've created a communion to feel, oh my gosh, your pain is my pain. It doesn't matter it was in the 1700s. What does that matter? Time isn't real. And so that exact thing you're feeling about this soul is the same thing I'm feeling about this soul, and validating that as well. So we started with the parts from this life and our this life experiences, and then it just organically expanded into the quantum. The longer we were together, the more these soul frequencies came in, and we had to respond to them. We weren't just going to call them past lives and dismiss them.
Right.
We were going to allow them. And these energies are intense sometimes. Like you take a Avalonian priestess who can, you know, move fire and change weather. And I'm trying, as Jelelle, to humbly feel her, you know, or an Atlantean aspect, you know, or a Lemurian. And then we get this gift exchange as we make this connection. They teach us and we teach them. And there's this beautiful equality that opens up in the soul that I've been so amazed by. All of this happening inside of our own being. I feel like we're all capable of this. We may want or need a space holder to activate it, but I don't feel that reading people's past lives out or reading a whole bunch of stuff out is actually very helpful at this point in time. I feel like we're really here to do our own healing in this way, and we can become our own guides as this opens out.
I love this part too. And please continue, both of you. I just want to say, because it really is the same tidbit. You're right. For everything that we've received in, we can call it memory, remembrance, code, light, whatever. You're right. It's just as important as that wounded teenager and some of the other things you're talking about. So it doesn't just apply to those things in our physical life that we've, are gaining awareness of. It's those things that brought awareness to who we are that we might let go, Todd. Reminder, Todd, to myself, that are just as much. Any of those pieces, I am not complete. Right? It's like I am not complete without the universe, but the universe is not complete without me. So this is me. This is my universe. That past life, that wounded child. They all, if they all can have a voice, love, honor, respect, and reverence in my universal field, then the potential of being able to share that and it be matched, or I match a higher one given to me that I'm close to, let's say Morgan Lee. Wow. That's just like universes are born.
Yes.
And
the piece here too, we can say this and say, oh, that sounds so great. And the reality is that there's parts of us too that are protective of this, that are afraid for us to go into these places, whether it's into a soul theme lifetime or our inner child, that have protected and guarded these energies for a long time.
Yeah.
So we find that a big piece of this is negotiation, and you have to kind of earn the trust. In all of our sessions, we bring in a protector energy. We bring in the defense instead of fighting it or battling it or denying it's even there. We talk with it, like, what are you afraid about going here? Why do you not want to go into depression? Or what's your resistance about? And we feel that. And maybe that's all we do, is just feel that resistance and no agenda.
Yes.
And then it takes maybe weeks to feel that resistance and where it comes from. And that has been a really big piece, is to not make these defenses wrong either. We'll say you're defended and your ego is in charge, but we don't really feel it that way. We feel like they're precious, and we couldn't have survived without them either.
Yeah, right.
So if I'm understanding you again, I love the way y'all make this so easy. It's not about what she did or what I did. Okay, it's about how I feel about what she did, or how she feels about what I did. How it makes me feel, why it makes me feel that way. It's not incumbent upon the other person. It's incumbent upon me.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
it's not about Raphael, you did this and I got a problem with it. It's, why do I have a problem with it? Because that's where the gold is. And that's the gold that I can share with Raphael. What's that?
And which part has a problem with it?
Yeah.
And is this a soul theme? And I'm not sitting here in some kind of mental processing. It's very emotional,
Right.
holding space with Mother, asking Divine Mother, can you help me see this, please? To see this part or aspect, or whatever other guides I'm working with. There isn't some lofty relationship. It's very personal, and lots of tears shed, and then we'll come together with this new information that we've each gotten individually. And by that time, it has nothing even to do with Raphael. He's kind of dissolved. All he was a bridge for me to be able to access it myself.
Of course.
And that changes a lot as well. Then you're not victim to the triggering that your partner creates. You're inviting it. It's like, could you trigger me? Because I want to feel myself more. I want to know myself. That's very different.
I've heard people say that type of thing, and welcome the triggers, and it carries a lot of different frequencies. And I think that's one of the things that would apply, like to what you said earlier, where I don't remember how you said it. You said it better than I can remember, which was basically to say it's one thing, to do it's another. And the only way to do it, I do remember you saying this, the only way to find out and learn it is to do it, or at least attempt to do it with the highest level of intention, kind of merging my free will with universal will or something like that. And so I think that's a really a great takeaway for me, and I think for other people too, is there's a whole new experiential in your frequency about looking at these things that we have been hearing people say something similar, but this has got a bit of a different flavor to it. And I can see that you've put in, I can see this must be, if not certainly one of the specialties that you bring to the table together is the dissection of the human condition in the direction of the transmutation and transformation. It's powerful. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for feeling that about us.
It feels really good to
Well,
be seen and acknowledged, and that just goes into my heart, Todd. And I feel, again, your reverence and curiosity and your transparency. That's the other favorite word of mine. Two favorite words in my lexicon, and you touched on both of them today, of curiosity and transparency. I just feel that's the key out of the jail cell. It's the map out of the jungle, is transparency. And that is actually doable. To say, I feel screwed. I'm in complete reaction. Whatever's true on the surface level that we're in touch with, to embrace that is transparenting something. And I think that's probably all parenthood is about, whether we're parenting children or parenting these aspects of ourselves, or being an ambassador to soul aspects of ourselves, is not a false, pretentious kind of ambassadorship that's all about political correctness. It's bridging what we're really feeling. So it's not shorn. It does get messy. It's not shorn of, I'm having a reaction to something you said, to something you did. That keeps it real. It's not, I'm right and I'm declaring that you're wrong, but I had this reaction. And I think that touches on the boundary piece you mentioned as well, that something occurred within my boundaries emotionally by what someone else said or did. And if I want to remain intimate with them, I'm either going to de-transparentize that, make it opaque, and we're going to be in some kind of falseness now, or I'm going to transparent it and be open to their feedback, how it lived in them. And if we're in this way of life that we embrace, it's an opportunity for both of us then to go deeper with the vertical aspects of ourselves and see this trigger as an opportunity. But I just feel so much, and I'd like to just, I think, impart this to all of us that are feeling these higher stress times that we're living in, where relationships and relationship dynamics are so amplified. We got to have a beginning 14 years ago for couples that are just coming together and starting out right now, when we are at the height of polarity and right and wrong, good and evil playouts. I really feel this piece about transparenting to ourselves, to the divine. The idea of an outward divine is okay with me, as well as that I am the divine.
Yeah.
And then this transparency with other. I feel it is really a guiding light out of the heightening of the times that we're in, that are calling for our very survival is rumbling within us, as everything we know is changing, is going through transmutation. These are the heightening of a feeling, and in moments like the very edge of our sanity, how do we find a sanity that can not deny anything, but find the intimacy that is, we're talking about something today, and that's kind of, how do we go from the foyer into the sanctuary of feeling held, feeling embraced, feeling supported. That's the gold to me, and it's equally the gold to witness it happening in somebody else, because it enlivens. I can see the mirror. That's what I want. I want more of that. Yes, that's what I'm going for. And seeing it living, seeing someone come into freedom, coming into centeredness, coming into wholeness, that is pure joy, and that is a beautiful thing to witness.
It really is.
Yeah.
If I'm getting whole by myself, I'm doomed. If I become the man with all the money in the world, that's of no value because there's nothing to buy.
Right. It's like Midas.
So it is a shared reality that we're coming into wholeness together.
So you said something there too. This is my favorite takeaway today. And again, it's all coming from what you were saying earlier. So when an aspect shows itself in these situations between two people, don't deny your transparency. This is what I'm getting from you. Don't, and that's incumbent upon the one who expresses it. Because
Yes.
even if the other person comes and says whatever, if I'm going to deny that something's happening to me through the futile projections that I might make, okay, I'm essentially denying that I'm being transparent in this moment and losing my shit. Okay?
Yes.
I had this happen to me recently for myself. And I knew in that moment I was losing my shit. And I said it. Did it make everything better? No. But at least I made some progress, because that's probably the first time I've ever done that. You know what I mean? I'm having a meltdown. But did the meltdown change? No. But at least I was able to get there. So the other thing I'm hearing from you, which I think is a great takeaway, and you said, how do you get from the foyer to the sanctuary? And I think of the words, and I don't know, there's so many, Rumi's thrown up on so many memes, you don't know what he said and didn't say. But I don't know, it was Rumi or Buddha. If you have to crawl, you fucking crawl. And I think that's another thing that you both exhibit. Excuse my French. I'm trying to do better, but I say that with great reverence. Morgan has said many times, well, regardless of what's gone on through all these years, we always return to love. And now I think the application of what she pulled down a couple of weeks ago that I mentioned at the top of the show, which is to be aware, to move straight to love, and then resolution. And that's another thing that you really exemplify. Because I have all these scenarios in my head, because I know you've been together this long. You've seen a lot. And you've been very conscious, plus your specificity of your mission. But I can actually see these pictures in my head, like, these two wounded teenagers are engaging. And through the process of attrition of all the other ways of trying to do it, you've gone, well, let's at least admit this. We love each other. Let's go into this space and go into a session type of experience. I don't know how you do it, but you're in love. Even if the human's pissed off and spitting bullets, you're in love, and you said, let's try this. And I can relate to that to a point as well, So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a very powerful thing. And also to acknowledge that to even be discussing this tells me that whoever's talking and whoever's listening has actually done this within themselves, and they just haven't given themselves enough credit. Because we wouldn't be here if we weren't doing the work.
And we have, like I said, this way of naming it. We have this way of relating to it. And when I meet with people, I say, you'll feel if this is a way for you or not. You'll feel if this is intuitive for you to relate to parts of the self, to relate to soul aspects, to, I have a 300-page book about this. So you'll relate to that, or you'll find another way to relate. But this was just the very specific way that came forward through our souls as, I feel, a divine gift. It's like we so wanted to be together. We so wanted to lead a new way of navigating relationships. And we also live it's a small community, but we've lived in community for 10 years as well. Sometimes with each other, sometimes not, particularly four of us have lived together. And so we're also
always
exploring,
proximal.
always proximal, and we're exploring the same thing we've been sharing about, that Raphael and I are exploring together. We explore as a community.
Right.
And sometimes, we'll go, gosh, there's only 6 of us doing this. And then I'll hear from the divine, you're seeding it. You're seeding something very different here in how you're relating to each other. And one of the community members is my ex-husband, actually. So we're really the father of my daughter, and my daughter is in our community as well.
Wow.
And so, you could look at that and say, wait, your ex-husband? But we've
Of
cleared
course.
so much through
He's
this.
my best friend.
Yeah. And
Oh my God, you're tripping me out. This is okay. Anybody want to see a sequel, or what do they call it? A sequel? Yeah, we're gonna have to have a sequel on this.
We'll come on again.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. Hey, listen. One of the things that I just want to say this, and again, I feel like, I saw this Johnny Cash meme. I share a lot of memes every day, and it said, "If you're not going to state how you feel and what you really think, then don't speak at all." And
Wow.
so I have to say this. A lot of people know that we don't push promotion on this show. We're not a marketing show. There's enough platforms that are. We've tried to find this happy medium where organically things flow and we can introduce people's platforms, books and such, without the next day getting 50 emails saying, let me come on the show and talk about my platform and my book. One of the things that has come to me once Morgan scheduled this, and I got a couple of messages, met a couple of people in person, you can't make this stuff up, who were talking about this really cool guy, and this, I can't remember exactly what their name is, but I'm like, what, these people in this picture. But one of the things that came through was how quiet, when I say quiet, I don't mean quiet, but how humble your approach has been. Now, I know from having been on this track for 10 plus years, that working with the new abundance, working in the groove of flow is not an easy thing. And it requires a tremendous amount of humility. And I'm not taking shots at anybody. I'm just saying we're trying to develop new code here. And so having said that, with what you offer today and your humility and your dignity and your commitment and devotion and your love, I'd like to know how people can find you. What is the name of your book? And anything else that you want to offer?
That just went in deep, Todd.
I'm just reflecting what I'm seeing and doing the best I can. But.
Yeah, it's just really touching because I think sometimes in that humble worthiness is what we call it, which is this sort of quality that's difficult to explain.
Yeah.
Because you're worthy, you're not unworthy, but yet you're humbled. And we ask the same questions you probably do. How promotional to be? We're just inviting people. We don't want to market. It's the same thing. We sometimes want to go in a cave and just let them find us.
Right.
But then we'll come back. We'll kind of go in a cave and then we'll come back out. And here we are with new things to offer. And I really feel like I've mentioned my book because it was a work of love. It came out of all of these deep sessions and work I did with women in my own life. And I was going to have it out.
It's, you know what?
But
I mean,
anyway,
this is organic. This is real.
Here's my book.
Yes. Free to be 5D. Hang on. Somebody put it up here.
Yeah.
But I just want to say,
That's
I think
Kasha. That's a community,
okay.
beloved community member there.
Hello, Kasha.
And she's also a facilitator of our work too.
Right on.
So
I think that, yeah. I'm sorry. What is it?
It's soulfulheart.org.
Soulfulheart.org. Can
And
somebody
put?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Kasha will do it.
Okay, let Kasha do it because I'm going to figure it out this week how I can do these things fast. Ty's going to show me because he's got the same app. But this is organic and this is right. And this is the feeling I got when I even looked at your pictures and I heard the stories. I believe that we're creating the new code, and it's not don't ever charge anything, and it's not I got to prove my value and charge whatever the number is. Everyone's on their own path. Don't get me wrong. It's somewhere in the middle. It's that negotiation that you talk about when you work with each other in the aspects of yourselves. And so. This feels right, and that's all I know. All we have is the moment, and this is how I'm choosing to collaborate, create with you. But let's see. Okay. It
I just
is.
want to say the website has everything. It has the
And
books, it
there's
has
the
sessions, it
there's the
has
link.
group calls. Yeah, Kasha just shared it. Thank you, Kasha.
Yeah.
And we're even negotiating around our session rate too, where
Right.
we're saying, 77 USD for 90 very full minutes. And I think there's a ton of
77.
value.
That's.
Yeah.
I think you should probably at least double that.
Well, but we
Seriously.
have
Yeah.
been more in the past, but
Yeah.
now it's just feeling like there's this humbleness
I think
of
so.
starting there, and we'll
Yeah.
even accept less if someone says, you know what, I want to meet with you weekly. I
Yeah.
need to meet with you, and I can only do 50. It's like,
Yeah.
well, of course we
Yeah.
would do that, because we want to seed this in the world, and
Yeah.
it's not an unworthiness that we are affordable. It's exactly what you were speaking of, is
There's
what is
Kitty.
yes, what is the amount where there's a value exchange, where someone
Yeah.
feels like, yeah, this is valuable to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
there's something to that. I mean, obviously, we in the Soulogy download, it was, it's a free community service, and when our website gets expanded, it'll be the same way. I said
Right.
at the last Soulogy Fest last year, I said, the day will come when everyone that comes will not spend a penny by the time they leave. Somehow or another, the universe is conspiring with us to bring in what you're talking about, which is finding that the best of the best, basically, through effort and through curiosity and through reverence of it all. So I'm happy to put up soulfulheart.org,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I'd love to have you guys come back on, and maybe we can even talk Morgan to coming on. We might, but yeah, I mean, really, I mean, it's just been a great honor. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the 90. What did she say? The 90 full minutes. The 90 very full minutes. There you go. There's no mistake. Bay Magdalene. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been a great honor, and I look forward to it. And I just feel, really privileged and blessed to be able to, sit before you in this moment, because it's not always easy, as you know, when you were separate.
Mhm.
But thank you for your service. I appreciate you. And I love you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Todd,
Todd.
so much. Thank you to all of the people in this room that have so contributed to this energy. We felt the energy all day long today, this very golden opportunity to be with this assembly of beloveds that your soul and the divine has brought together. And we just feel the contribution of everybody listening. This isn't a spectator sport. They've all been contributing with their hearts and presence. And we would love to, when the time's right, come back and share in this flow once again.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure.
Peace out. Love you. See y'all a little bit later.
Bye-bye.
We'll be back on within an hour or two. I can promise you that. All right. See you later. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.